How often have you shopped with a company that has a 365-day money-back guarantee? Okay, let's take it a step further. How often has this company also been in the health and wellness space? Two words for you: nature, city. Carl will be the first to tell you how his frustrations grew when it came to walking in GNC and trying to find the right dietary supplements or vitamins and minerals for himself. From the floor to ceiling, there are bottles and packets everywhere, and sometimes it's just hard to pronounce these ingredients and it's hard to even follow the instructions. So he decided to take matters into his own hands with his wife and thus formed Nature City, where the scientifically studied ingredients, where the vetted manufacturers will give you all the confidence you need to truly take care of you and your body. Because the main focus here is healthy aging. But on top of living longer, they want you to live better. And he'll be the first to tell you how some companies make a bad rep for this industry, all to make a sale. So remember those two words: nature, city. And without further ado, enjoy episode 240, Superb Supplements. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Down to Business podcast here with Tamar Turner. This episode is going to be right up some of my followers' alleys. I know it's right up my alley. For those of y'all who remember my stint as a chief marketing officer with a health and wellness brand, we were making a lot of content. I was putting you guys on. I was even educating myself in that realm. So very excited to be sitting down with Carl today because he's not new to the game. He's definitely very true to the game. So I know he can give us some insight. I know I have some questions for him, and I know we'll definitely be doing some follow-ups afterwards, but very excited for him to, share his story, share the website, share everything that he does, and even share some tips for people out there at certain points in their health journey. But before we get into all things, Carl, how you doing? How's everything on your end?
Couldn't be better. Thanks very much, Tamar, for the warm welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for just taking the time to join us today. So, look, I know we're going to have quite the audience today. I know we're going to have some people from my side. I know we're going to have some people from your side, but we're going to have my favorite type of people. And those are the ones who probably know nothing about either one of us, but have somehow in some capacity have come across this episode. So to bring everybody up to speed, to put everybody on the same playing field, can you just do two things for me? Can you, one, just tell me a little bit about yourself? And then can you, two, just tell me what brings you on the Down to Business podcast today?
Absolutely. So Carl Pradelli started Nature City, if you can believe it, 24 years ago, and co-founded that business with my wife. It's always a good test of a relationship if you can work with your wife, right? And we've managed to do it for this long, so I guess that means a healthy relationship. Tamar actually spent the first dozen years of my life in a totally different business. I was in the private equity investment banking world, and always had this entrepreneurial bug and and I like kind of the idea of being an owner of the business more than like an agent, if you will, serving the business. And there's nothing wrong with that, just my preference. And I was at like a point in my life where I had to make a decision. I was about 35 years old. And if I was going to try this, being a founder and an entrepreneur, it was kind of now or never. And wrote a business plan and kind of, a couple of principles, core principles, which still drive the company today. And knock on wood, was still here and doing okay. And as far as why I'm here, just love to talk to other, like-minded individuals who are trying, to share how people can better their own lives and better their own businesses, and anything I can do to help support that, I'm in.
Absolutely love that. And again, thank you for just, taking the time to join us to share your story with myself as well as my audience. Now, I do think you made a good point about, going into business with your wife, with a significant other. That's definitely a true test. It'll definitely tell you what's really right, what's really wrong. So, but something I'm more so curious about before we get into everything Nature City. So the private equity, obviously almost two different ends of the spectrum: private equity, health and wellness. Was there something specific that propelled you into wanting to get into health and wellness? Was it always an interest that you had? Was it something that came about as you were writing your business plan? What did that look like?
Yeah, it really stemmed from personal interest. As a consumer, I was incredibly frustrated with the idea of shopping for dietary supplements. Back then, this is, internet was in its infancy at this point in time. So in my case, I would be shopping. I lived up in New York City at the time. I'd be shopping like in a, GNC, like in the Upper West Side. And you just walk into the store and it's like the most incredibly intimidating experience. I mean, you're surrounded by walls of pills, and you're not sure what you're supposed to buy, what's good. Even if you knew what you wanted, there's like 16 different options. How do I choose the best one? I never chose the cheapest one or the most expensive one. Took one in the middle that had a nice looking label or something, and that's how I was making these important health decisions, right? So that kind of just that was a big part of driving the business plan. It's like, how would I do this differently? And that was part of it. And I also, as part of my responsibilities where I worked, I was on the board of directors of a drugstore company up in New York called Dwayne Reed. If you've ever been to New York City, you've probably seen those. They're on almost every corner. But it was interesting. You get the quarterly reports of what's selling in the store. And everything's growing all different categories are growing 7 to 10%, something along those lines. And there's this one category just growing at 70%, and it's called VMS. And I was like, what's VMS? And it's vitamins, minerals, supplements, right? So I was like, interesting. So so it's just one of those things where I felt the consumer need and demand and kind of met each other, and that there was going to be a big opportunity to to make a business out of it and make a living, more importantly, really by helping people with their health, which is kind of the most exciting part for me.
As someone who was born in the Bronx and raised in Philly, I am pretty familiar with Dwayne Reed, and I'm sure a lot of my family and my
There you
audience
go.
will be as well. So look, that's just another connection that we have there. But understood most definitely, and I can definitely speak to the GNC and just the intimidation and just not really knowing. As somebody who I definitely care about health and wellness, I definitely do care about my health, especially with I'm on the when this episode airs, I'll be 30. My birthday is the 26th of July. But I am definitely just now more than ever just paying attention to that, just paying attention to what I'm eating, my dietary things. Something I did a long time ago was I stopped taking pills like Tylenol, your ibuprofens, and different things like that. And more so just started paying attention to my habits. Am I hydrated enough? Am I getting enough sleep? I used to suffer from migraines growing up. So that was something where I thought, a quick Tylenol, a quick Excedrin or something like that would just do the trick. But eventually I started to realize I didn't know what was going into my body. I couldn't read half the ingredients on the labels. And so it did scare me a little bit. And I
Sure.
just felt like it was something that I could control. But I can speak to that firsthand of just being in a GNC and it literally floor to ceiling of just different things in front of you. You don't really know what to do. And you see different price points and you see some brands are this, some brands are that. And then I'll ask my friends and everybody kind of gives me like a different answer. So it's hard to know like where to start. So for you, when making that transition into business, when really getting Nature City, building that foundation, what were some of the focal points for you early on? What were some of the things, what were some maybe even pillars or principles that you really wanted to hone in on, that you really wanted people to see when they saw Nature City?
Absolutely. So it starts with product, right? And I always say everybody claims to have the best product with the best ingredients, but what does that mean? So what it means for Nature City is we only use in our products what's called the branded scientifically studied ingredients. So let me explain what that means. Okay. It's not it's not a generic ingredient. It's something where the supplier has branded it to separate it and distinguish it from the rest of the marketplace. And usually these are high quality premium made ingredients and scientifically studied. They've actually been the subject of published research in peer-reviewed journals. So they've been subject to placebo-controlled studies, which to me is ultimately the way you can really validate what something does, right? And it's one thing to have anecdotal evidence, is where your cousin tried it and it helped do this. But it's another thing to really put it to scientific clinical rigor, where you can really see if something works. So that's really the promise. One of the promises we make for our clients is that we don't do any generic substitutions. We really just focus on what's these branded clinically studied ingredients, just not only for efficacy purposes but for safety purposes, because not only do these studies that are published in these journals test the efficacy of the ingredient, but typically they tracked out there any unwanted effects, right? Which people are always concerned about. So just a safer, better way to go. And that's my one piece of advice for folks. Whether you're buying from Nature City or anyone else, try to focus on these, branded, scientifically studied supplements with these branded, scientifically studied ingredients. You're much more likely to get the outcomes you're seeking than otherwise. So that's one. Sorry, I'll pause there in case you had anything you want to follow up with that.
No, I like that. So no, if you were going to keep going, please keep going. I'm with you.
And then, of course, USA manufacturing within the product is so vitally important these days, especially with the growth of supplements sold on the internet. Amazon in particular has had to struggle a lot with products made overseas that just are flat out fraudulent. Okay, they don't have what they claim to have. They're not made with the standards they have. All without going off track and going into too much detail, a lot of problems with these companies. So with those type of products. So not only is it important to have the right ingredients, you really want to know who's doing the manufacturing, because in the supplement business tomorrow, most companies, because it's such a specialized thing, supplement manufacturing with so much regulation behind it, and and manufacturing practices that have to be adhered to meet FDA standards and so on. Most companies like us, we tell the manufacturer what to make, and they make it for us. Okay. However, fraud could happen at any different level of this equation. It could happen at the supplier level. It could happen at the brand level, where you have unscrupulous bad actors, or the manufacturer may not be all that good or have your interest at heart as a consumer. So, important to know all these factors: what's in the product, what motivates the brand, and who's doing the actual manufacturing. So that's what quality supplements means to us at Nature City.
That's so important, and you have my brain turning even more now than when I started this interview, because that was probably the biggest thing that I wanted to touch on: manufacturing, and just the need for due diligence. Just that, we can easily, I feel like I see it now when I'm scrolling on any social media site. There are just so many people offering so many things and just giving their 2 cents and saying that this is the best and that's the best. You can get this here, you can get this there, you can go in here. And then I talk to other people and they're just like, all this stuff is the same essentially. Sometimes some things are more generic than others. Some things were tested a bit more. Other things are just, not what looks to be the eye. So, all this, anybody can put anything on a label and wrap it around a bottle and sell it to you. So my main question was, especially for you in the Nature City side of things, what was that process like of doing that due diligence, of making sure you chose the correct manufacturer and somebody that wasn't just selling you any old thing to put into the market?
Well, it can be a painful experience, because you do, when you're starting out, especially, and you don't have any experience, you make mistakes. And I quickly realized that if we were going to develop Nature City into a lasting brand, that I needed a reliable manufacturer I could rely on, is going to give me consistent quality product every single time. Right. And frankly, when there's a mistake, because, stuff does happen, right? Something goes wrong, they're going to stand behind it, right? And not try to pass the buck somewhere. Very, very important. So we, kissed a few frogs, if you will, along the way, until we really found what today is really our core manufacturing partners, that, some we've been with over 20 years now, that I don't lose sleep over what they're doing, because I know they're doing the right thing. So, and they know us too, right? They know the specialized nature of our, no pun intended, specialized nature of our products and our ingredients, and how we try to do everything, top shelf. So, anyone that tells you all these ingredients are the same with slight differences, if there's one thing you take away from this podcast, if you're interested in consuming supplements, I strongly disagree with that statement. There's incredible variability in quality.
I like that. And I think the bigger message even behind that is that everything doesn't work out the first time. And sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board. Sometimes you have to go back to step one. Sometimes, as you said, have to kiss a few frogs in order to really get where you want to be. But I think oftentimes, depending on how passionate you may be, where you may be in your journey, that could be very discouraging. And it could be something that sometimes takes you out of business or makes you kind of look into a different lane rather than, especially coming in with no experience. I feel like that's the time where you're really learning the most, where you're really trial and error. And sometimes an error can just be, it can be the make or break for some people. It can ruin a lot of credibility. It can hurt. I mean, it can do more harm than it can do more good. So another thing that I heard you mention was that and correct me if I say this wrong, you said all of your products are made within the United States.
Correct.
Is that pretty much by choice? Is it a preference? The reason why I asked that question is because, and I think about, and maybe it's different within the supplement world, but I think about how a lot of the complaints nowadays, or even I've noticed it too, like people say when they go on vacation, people say two things: the food is nasty or it tastes cleaner. And sometimes I think that people may think that different food is nasty, quote unquote, because it's just not as artificially made as what we're used to here in the United States. So when it comes to supplements, though, is that to be true when it comes to various ingredients? Are you guys steering clear of going outside of the United States for a particular reason, or was that just a choice that you made for manufacturing purposes?
No, it's by design, for several reasons. Most importantly, the United States really has if not the top, but among the highest standards for making products, right? There's something called the GMPs, good manufacturing practices. The FDA, tells you what those are, and all the manufacturers we use, of course, are GMP certified and follow these guidelines. But like I said, it's even even within the United States, there are plenty of, I'll call them subpar manufacturers. Okay, so just because it's made in the U.S. doesn't mean it's good. However, you have a lot better shot than if it's made elsewhere, because it's just, unfortunately, Tamar, it's just very easy. It's very easy to get into this business, and it's even easier to be deceived or buy a product that's not what's claimed on the label. How would you know? As a consumer, are you going to go out and start testing things in laboratories yourself? Probably not, right? So it's not only important for us and our own peace of mind and desire to bring bring our customers the best, but consumers want it too, or at least many of them, I should say, really prefer the peace of mind that comes along with USA manufacturing. So it's it's, to me, it's one of those things that there's no budging on that, right? It's we're going to make our products here, and I mean, people come to us all the time, says, "Oh, we could save you money here, we could save you money there." It's like, you're not saving me any money, please. And over the long term, it all pays for itself. So that's how we approach it.
I think that that's important. Some things that are just a non-negotiable when it comes to business. And if you want to follow those, when you said GMP, I just smiled a little bit because I'm definitely familiar with that from my previous company, and just recognizing that a lot of people will cut corners out here. A lot of people will just sell you short just to make a buck. So I do understand that.
Yeah, no, it's true. Or like, say, even give you another example I know has happened is, we talk about these branded, scientifically studied ingredients. Some people will put 10% on an ingredient and then use a generic to, because they cost more, of course, then use a cheap generic to fill in the rest, right? And it's really hard to detect that unless you're really looking for it sometimes. So there's all kinds of stories and of unscrupulous behavior. So you do have to be careful, and it's unfortunate because it gives the supplement, the good actors in the supplement business, it just gives the whole business, taints the whole business, the perception of it in a lot of people's minds. And, it really bothers me. It's one of my pet peeves, is people selling fraudulent or, subpar products that aren't what they claim to be. It's a lot of what I do on my podcast is try to educate people on, how to look for good products and avoid being taken advantage of, fraudulent, with fraudulent supplements. And, I give examples of, all right, here's what happened. guess what? This we a recent one we did was berberine supplements. Berberine's a popular ingredient now for metabolic health and weight management. It's prime for adulteration and fraud. So someone bought 15 berberine supplements on Amazon, and I think less than half of them had even 10% of the amount of the ingredient it was supposed to have. So if they're saying 500 milligrams, people they didn't even have 50 in there. Forget giving a couple a little short. I mean, it was clearly designed to deceive. So I mean, stuff like this is happening a lot, and it just really stinks for the good companies in the business and consumers, obviously. So that's one of my biggest pet peeves out there tomorrow. So
And I can't even say I blame you. One bad apple will certainly spoil the bunch, and it really does not have to be that way, especially when you have companies like Nature City that are truly doing the due diligence and making sure that they dot their I's and cross their T's to do all that. So I'm kind of curious. I want to take it a step further in this realm. When it comes to the companies that are using fraudulent products that are not necessarily living up to the standards and everything, is there a way to, I know that there, like you said, your GMPs, I know we talk about like FDAs and different things being tested and certified, but is there more of a way to hold these companies accountable, or is it kind of just, as you said, because of the ease of getting into this business, people can kind of get away with that a bit more?
unfortunately, you can get away with it for quite a long time, and there's certainly the regulators and even the online retailers or in-store retailers, they do their best to try to figure out ways to police it. But every time there's a new, say, regulation that's put in place, if you're already breaking 3 or 4 laws, what's 5, right? If that's your intent, right? And the point is, the bad actors always seem to find a way around things, and it just ends up costing the good people just all right, we got another thing we got to do, which costs money. So it ends up costing us more, but they just always find a workaround, it appears. So it's tough. And what's really weird is, I mentioned that Amazon example. A lot of these products were rated 4.5 or above on Amazon. Okay. So you look at, because that's a big way people make decisions, right? They look at the ratings of the products. Say, oh, this is a good product. There was nothing in these products. It was so, it's just, it's tough. And that's why I spend so much time trying to educate folks on how to really avoid being what I call a victim of supplement fraud. But it's a challenge. It's really a challenge.
When you're working against so many out here, like you said, if they're already knocking down a few, what's a few more? So yeah, I understand that. And I definitely do just see the frustration, because I see that across so many different industries, like even with content creation and marketing, and just what people are really doing, and not really, and how people can falsify anything. Like, you can, social media, AI, it's a lot of power out here, and things that you can do and manipulate. And to the masses who aren't as versed in these industries, like you said, they'll give it a 5-star review, or the placebo effect, or they'll think that is good, or they'll see somebody else rate it this way, and they say, okay, well, this has to be lo and behold the truth. So I get that. All right. Now, eliminating all the bad guys. Now I want to talk about Nature City. Okay, so when you guys were coming into business, when you kind of were realizing, okay, the vitamins, the minerals, the supplements, this is what we want to do, was there anything in particular that you wanted to start with? Any ailments or health focuses that you had? Any particular products that kind of were top of mind and that you knew that you wanted to kind of sell, or was it kind of varying depending on the manufacturer?
We really were focusing on healthy aging. Okay. That was really the long-term goal. I looked at even back then how unhappy people were with the healthcare system, and how they be put on one medication, and then they have to take a second medication to deal with some effects of the first one, and then a third for the second. So, and they just didn't feel like they were making any progress, right? So, one of the inspirations for this was, I really in my my own family's life, I wanted to, just them to approach health differently. Okay, I was more interested in not only just longevity and living longer, but living better for as many of those years as possible. That's a big distinction, right? I mean, you don't just be like sitting in a corner, miserable, uncomfortable, and just, wow, hey, I made it to 89, 90. No, if you want to live, right? So really, that was the main focus. And you look at like, what does that what's involved in that? Well, certainly, we think it starts with digestive health. It starts with taking care of your joints and muscles and bones. Obviously, your heart and cardiovascular health, your brain function, and cognitive health. And there's probably, 3 or 4 others we could talk about. So that was kind of the real approach. And we really wanted to follow the science, and, I'd listen to anyone's pitch if it had good scientific data and see if it made sense. I thought it made sense for our customers. We did start out with something because I thought it was kind of novel, and in the sense that I didn't even know it could be ingested. We start out with an aloe vera supplement. Okay, it's called True Aloe, which is actually today still one of our leading products. That was our first product, and when I was kind of starting, I always knew aloe, as many people do, as a topical remedy, right? If you burn your skin, you get an insect bite, or spend too much time in the sun or whatever, you put aloe on, and magically you get some nice relief, right? So a lot of those properties that are helping you topically also help you internally, right? But if you would find 100 people on the street like me, probably 80 to 90 of them wouldn't think you could even ingest aloe, or even know aloe vera was a supplement, right? That you could take. So when I started looking into the science and just the novelty of it, we said, you know what? This would be good to have in our product lineup. And that was our first and still one of our most popular items. It's really the aloe plant is really amazing. It's a remarkable botanical, and that's, so that was the first. But really our approach was, all right, anything that could really help us age better and feel better and look better and just live a happier and better life, has our interest.
Okay, I like that. And yes, I at one point I was in that 80 to 90. I did not know that. I was so used to it just being, even when you see like different lotions or creams, it was always made with aloe, or some people would get the plant and they would just take it out and they would use it naturally. But I did not realize that, I saw people cooking with aloe. I saw people ingesting it. So I was just like, wow, like that's very interesting. Like I did not, who would have thought? But then again, as you do that research, as you really learn, you never really know kind of what can come about. So one of the things that really piqued my interest on your website about the products was the 365-day money back guarantee. I read why. I was very like, I had to scroll it twice and just make sure that I was reading correctly and just making sure. So can you just tell me what was the meaning behind that? Why did Nature City decide to make that decision for its customers and consumers?
I'm glad you asked this because I love this story. So when we started out, we had your typical 30-day, 60-day guarantee. However, with most supplements, it's really hard to evaluate them in that time frame, right? A lot of products, you're not going to necessarily know it's, or have an idea it's even helping you for months, right? If then. And couple that with, I found that a lot of customers, they'd order something, and I'm sure you've probably done this too, and it, the package arrives and it sits there for a week or two, right? You don't open it up right away. You're on to other things and finally get around to it. So I said, this guarantee, we need to give people a longer period of time to try or put our products to a true test, as I say, right? And I said, why don't we go with a 1-year guarantee? And our accounting team was like freaking out, saying, you know how many returns we're going to get, and like, our over, with a 1 year guarantee. And I was like, I don't know. I think one, people will be more inclined to buy more, right? Instead of buying like one bottle, to buy 3, 6, or 6 bottles, or maybe even 12, which is good for us because, not only do they have a better chance of having success, it becomes more of a habit in their day, right? When you get used to taking a product every day, it just becomes a ritual, right? So I like that dynamic. And as far as the return percentage, it went down. It went down. It didn't, went down significantly, actually. And I think it really just gave people a chance to really try our products. And, again, if we do the right thing and make a good product and you use it for a reasonable period of time, I think you're more likely to have a good outcome, and that's really what's happened. And surprisingly, today, I mean, you look at most guarantee periods. I mean, most of them are like, oh yeah, we'll give you a 30-day guarantee, but you have to go through 16 different hoops to get your money back and all kinds of different things. And it's like, no. We're here. We've been doing this for over 20 years. Try a product. If for some reason you don't like it, even if it's 10 months from now, you want your money back, you'll get your money back. So, it's just, I mean, I couldn't think of a better way to really show the confidence we have in our products and our ingredients and just the way we do our business. And, we've had many customers too. Another important point on this is, we've had plenty of people who tried their first product with us, end up returning it. I'm like, wow, you actually give my money back. It's like, well, what do you mean we give you money back? What we did. People don't give you money. Anyway, that led them to try another product, right? And this one they felt met their needs, and they just became long-term customers. So another benefit I hadn't really thought about at the outset, but it just instills trust. And that, in my category, in a lot of businesses, not just in supplements, trust is the biggest challenge, right? For you mentioned it earlier, it's like, it's everyone's skeptical, and rightly so. And how do you build trust? And we just felt it was a good way to differentiate ourselves, and I think it's worked out.
Two things there is that one, I love how you kind of spoke towards the end about the confidence, because I do think that offering a 365 day year guarantee, I think that speaks to just how confident you are in your products. And I think it even more so proves the validity of everything. Look, if you don't like it because 30 days can, as you said, it can go by just like that. I think about a subscription, a free trial that I've gotten, and you forget, and the next thing you know, you're getting charged full price for something. You're like, wow, I forgot it's been a month already. I can't believe it. But I think that says, okay, hey, look, you have 12 months to not really like this. We'll give you more than enough time. And even then it could speak to that validity as well, because it's just like, okay, well, somebody may then return it. And we all know, I would say almost everybody probably listening to this has gone through a hoop and a hurdle when it comes to a return. So much so to the point where you may even just cut the return short. Hey, I'll just keep it. I'll just take this loss right now. I'll just keep it, because it's not, they're not the most conducive. So the fact now that, okay, then you bring it back, we'll give you the money. Oh, really? Like, wow, I feel now. So now I really want to go back, because it's like, okay, well, maybe this just wasn't for me. But I see that this company is they're men and women of their word. The business is business, but hey, let me try something else. So I think that speaks volumes of just I could see why, the account team and everybody else, they were probably just like, oh, come on, like this is probably just too much. But I think when you're thinking that bigger picture and that longer game, you're like, no, I think we'll be okay. And I think if anything, this just propels us a little bit more and allows us to build more rapport with more people and prove that, look, at the end of the day, if you don't like it, it's okay. It's all, look, we may not be for everybody, but what it also may be is that this product may just not be what's conducive to you, because that's also something that I had to learn within health and wellness and with the company that I was a part of. That's something that may work wonders for somebody else, may just not be your speed, may just not be for you. So that leads me to my next question as well. Like, so when it comes to, I could imagine that there have been some people in some capacity that have started their health and wellness journey with you that have, you've probably been one of the first companies that they started ordering products from, or one of the ones that they really do trust. So when people come to you, and I see that your website highlights different, like you sell products based off different categories, as you said, whether we're talking digestive, cardiovascular, anything of the sort like that. Does Nature City offer like consultations? Are you guys coaching people through things? Or are you kind of making plans for others? I could imagine that. I was clicking on some of the products and they're very descriptive as to, like, what they serve, what they do. But for some people who may not be versed with all these terminologies and may not really know where to start, what does that look like as far as like an assistance perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly do not have a formal program where, you schedule a 15-minute session like that, although it could be interesting, but, time constraints with me personally may make that challenging. But a couple of things. One, you can reach us by phone 24/7. During the business day, you'll get an actual NHC representative. For when we're closed, we do have another good company who handles our calls, again, here in the United States. We're not sending you overseas. So you can always talk to somebody, and our reps have become pretty knowledgeable about our products over time. However, they get a lot of questions they can't answer, and those will come to me or my wife's desk, and we make sure everyone is answered. Okay, so if you have, I mean, a lot of times people want medical advice that we have to be careful. We really can't delve into their personal situations, right? That's not what we do, and it's not really permissible. But we education is what we're about, right? And that was like another core principle. We wanted to make sure people really were knowledgeable about what they're putting inside their body, right? I mean, some people will shop, like, go to 10 different stores to buy a pair of pants or something like that, but they'll just, like, you're haphazardly throw something inside their body, which they don't even know what's in it. So we really, that's a big part of it. And tomorrow, what also happens when you take the time to answer these questions, you learn a lot yourself about what's on consumers' minds, and just maybe some nuance of the product or ingredient or something that you didn't realize. So I find it very valuable, not only to help our customer with their questions or issues, but just to further my own personal kind of knowledge and education. So yeah, we don't. Every question comes to either Beth or I if our folks can't mention it, and we make sure we get a good answer for them as best we can.
It's nothing like being able to speak from experience. And that was something that I noticed when I first started as the chief marketing officer. There were questions coming in the inboxes or the emails or even our phone line. And it was just like, yeah, I genuinely don't know the answer to that. And I'm not even going to lie to you. I'm not even going to say that I do. I'm going to direct you to somebody who may. But eventually it propelled me and it motivated me. Okay, well, let me learn, or let me try some of these products I was trying for the first time, or some ingredients I was trying for the first time, or some things I was even just Googling and learning after, just repetition. And then when things started to tie into one another, it makes sense. And one thing is kind of like a combo with another. It was just like, wow, okay, I really do understand this. I can get this. It's one thing to be able to just speak to sell. It's another thing to speak to understand and to speak to really know. And that's really what I can appreciate about my previous company and even Nature City. You guys are not here to make sales. At the end of the day, health is wealth. And the product will sell themselves, because we know that, because even the bogus products are selling themselves. So when you truly find a product that works for you, when you truly find a company with the backing that it is, and when you truly find people that you can talk to in some capacity, it just allows things to transition that much more. Okay, so looking at the Nature City dynamic, 20 plus years in business, I could imagine that over these 20 plus years, there have been some changes. What was happening 20 years ago and what people were doing 20 years ago is probably not what they're doing right now, right currently. So over the course of the time that you and your wife have been in business and have built this team and have built this foundation, what have been one or two like eye-opening things, whether it be from a business perspective, whether it be from a health and wellness perspective, manufacturing, would have just been some things that have just been very interesting to learn over these years?
Yeah, I say, I mean, even though it's been the same company all this time. I feel like I've started 5 different businesses along the way, right? Because you constantly have had to reinvent yourself, right? And that's what is in business. Okay, I mean, there's no set it and forget it, right? Especially these days, what works today is probably not going to work for you 3 or 4 months from now, right? So you, or may not work 3 or 4 months from now. So, yeah, I mean, we've constantly had to reinvent our business. We actually started out, our marketing was more kind of catalog and direct mail based. Okay, so the internet was really, our website was just there to take orders if you got our catalog. So probably the biggest change since we started was how the online marketplace has just blossomed. And we had to change as well. I mean, unfortunately, like trying to acquire customers through mail, which was really effective for us for a long time, just the cost of postage and paper and everything else, and the fact that less and less people, spending time reading their mail. We just had to figure out, we had to reinvent ourselves in that way, and just say, okay, we have to go where the audience is. And that was that was tough, because it really was like a totally different business, and still is. I mean, we're still learning, right, as we all are. So that was just gigantic. I'll tell you something else that happened. I mean, the pandemic, which was great for a lot of health and supplement companies, was a gigantic challenge for us. Okay, because one of our biggest business strengths became a weakness, or potential weakness. As I mentioned, we rely on very specific ingredients, and don't, and one of our commitments is we're not going to just make a cheap substitution, if you will, just because it satisfies the ingredient label. So if we were selling a particular brand of green tea, we're not going to just go find some generic green tea that's available from some distributor, from whatever, just, all right, sounds the same, has the same specs. It's not what we do, right? So, with everything that was going on with the pandemic and all the supply chain challenges, and, and country challenges and everything else, we had a really tough time staying in stock on a lot of items, because, when you're making a product like this, if there's, 10 components to it, if you don't have one, you can't make it, right? Even if the other 9 are there. So it was, that was really, 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 that was a really, really tough experience for us to get through. Despite, I know some other companies just like it was the best thing that ever happened to them. It made some companies, but for us, because of this, was one of the strengths of our business and core commitments we made to consumers, which is these specific premium quality ingredients backed by research. If it wasn't available for whatever reason, couldn't make our product. So that was not a fun time. For a lot of other reasons too, obviously, but for our business, it was not a good time.
It's very interesting to hear that, because I really feel like in a lot of the business owners that I've talked to, especially the more tenured ones, like your 10, 15, 20 plus, marketing has always been not necessarily the main challenge, but like the main adjustment for them. What they kind of came into business and how they were promoting originally, they've had to change as social media has just, there are too many sites to even keep up with nowadays. I tell myself that, and I don't consider myself like I consider myself just a very like fundamental person, and I still do open every letter that I get, and I still do read my mail and my emails and everything like that. But I do see how, like, my brother's generation, that's not their thing. Like, that's just not what they're trying to do. Everything for them is just click, or if I can't scroll and see it real fast, it's just not what it is. So it is very interesting that as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, how you start to appeal to different crowds and audiences as you get older, and how you have to adjust. And like you said, it feels like you're starting a new company almost, or reinventing something, or starting from square one, but still having the base of Nature City. So that's interesting. Very, very, very interesting. So speaking of starting at square one, for those who are not very well versed with products, supplements, vitamins, minerals, ingredients, everything of the sort like that, what are just some pieces of advice or like tips and tricks that you can teach them when it comes to finding the right product. Because something that I love that you spoke to earlier was that whether you whether someone chooses Nature City or not, you just want to make sure that they're choosing correctly. And I think that that's so important because at the end of the day, that's the name of the game. We just want people to make sure that they're doing what needs to be done for themselves. Health is wealth. I will continue to say that. So for those people out there who just may not be the most knowledgeable in this industry and in this field, what are just some things that they can look out for when it comes to looking at different supplements and different products?
Sure. So we'll start that, but with a common question is, well, what should I take? Period. Right. And I always suggest starting with, remember, a dietary supplement is supposed to supplement what you're getting or not getting from diet. Right. So if someone's starting out and just wants to know where to begin in terms of what they should take, we just say, all right, we just look at what you're not getting. And most people are not getting like enough probiotic bacteria and to help their gut and digestive system, and actually the whole body. It's you help the gut, you really help the whole body, right? Something like an omega-3, which is so key to so many aspects of wellness. Again, unless you're a regular fish eater, you're probably not getting enough omega-3s in your diet. Vitamin K2 and D3, right? Two key vitamins that almost nobody's getting enough of in a sense in terms of vitamin K2 from their diet, because the primary source is fermented foods, which we don't eat a ton of fermented foods in the United States. Critically important vitamin, and it works in partnership with vitamin D, which also people struggle with, right? That's not much of a dietary thing. We get that mostly from exposure to sunlight. However, most people, their vitamin D levels are below optimal. So a supplement makes a lot of sense. So those are like some examples saying, all right, what am I not getting through diet? That's where you start. And then you can get into some of the specialty things, what you're interested in tomorrow. If you're interested in, joints and bones or your heart health or whatever, then we could delve further into that. So in terms of a couple quick tips, we mentioned a couple. We'll just go through those quickly. Seek out the branded, scientifically studied ingredients in your products. Okay, make sure understand who's actually doing the manufacturing of that product. Okay, not just the brand, but the product. Spend some time really researching the brand and the owners. Okay, because it's really important to understand why someone's in this business. As you may know from your background, a lot of people are in this business because they're just killer marketers, especially online, and they know how to generate a lot of traffic and cheap traffic, and they could sell something that people are interested in, which is the supplement of the day. So that's being in the business for the wrong reason, right? So you really have to understand what's the founder's motivation here. Why are they doing this? What confidence can I have in them? Why can I trust them? What's their guarantee? All these different things give you a real sense of, are they in this for the right reason? Or is the about us some generic corporate mission, which could be on any website for any business, right? That's really, 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 I think, important to understand. And it's also really important is a lot of companies get sold and they lose a lot of the founding principles which made them great in the first place. The new owners are focused more on boosting profit margins, or they think they could do this, make a substitute to an ingredient, enhance the gross profit, and so on and so forth. So brands change, so you have to be on top of that. Happens all the time. I had a friend just quickly who sold her company, and she was still sort of the face of the brand, but they totally changed her formula, and people were so pissed, about what and she's like, hey, I'm still, unfortunately, didn't do a good enough job in her selling documents where she would have approval of all these things. But she was essentially the face of something that was just such a terrible product compared to what she used to sell. And as the new owner's decision, right? So ownership matters, and who's running the company really matters. That's something else you really have to spend a little time just getting to know. Finally, I will just give you one other one. We talk about pet peeves. This is one of my biggest ones for supplement. When you look at a supplement label, beware of what's called proprietary blends or ingredient blends, where you see like a whole bunch of ingredients lumped together into some type of blend, and they only disclose the amount of the blend itself, not the amount of each ingredient you're getting. Okay? Because that is a screaming signal that they're trying to hide something from you. Okay? They're not doing that for your interest. Okay? What's most typical is they're giving you relatively little of the good stuff you want in that blend and a whole lot of stuff you know that's more or less useless to you. Okay? Be careful of these ingredient or proprietary blends. I just did a podcast a month or two ago on magnesium products. You've seen this a lot where people are like, where companies are saying 8 types of magnesium in this one product or 12 types of magnesium in one capsule. And I go through it very methodically to show that 90% or more of that supplement is just magnesium oxide, the cheapest and crappiest and least useful form of magnesium for your body, that when taken high amounts can also cause gastrointestinal distress. So beware of these blends. You should know what amount of each ingredient you're getting. You have that right, and you should know it before you take a product. If they won't tell you, that's a red flag. But just the fact that they're putting this blend on the label, it just and look, there's a lot of good brands that I respect that do this, but it really just drives me crazy. Because they'll put like 15 ingredients there and say, oh, you get 50 milligrams of these 15 ingredients. It's like 50 milligrams from 15 ingredients is like none of this is going to do any good, right? But they're trying to hide something from you. So beware of these blends. That's a big one.
Gems were dropped, and now that's even going to make me look at things a little bit differently now, but especially with the vitamins too, because I do feel like even some of the ones that you were naming, I wasn't the most familiar with. I've heard of them, but I didn't know really where to get them from per se and what to really do to make that happen. So, but no, I mean, I can appreciate it. I can always just appreciate the transparency. And again, like I said, from the time we really started this, I could definitely just sense the passion, but also just the want for people to just do better and to really just care about their health, and not only do that, but prioritize it just the same. So, all right. So without spoiling anything, without revealing stuff a little bit too soon, what's next? What does Nature City have cooking up? What are you, I know that there's the podcast out there and there's the education piece of things. And I know that you guys are probably doing a lot behind the scenes. So I asked this question too, because I love just knowing that there are going to be people, whether they tapped in with me live, whether they're listening to the interview at some point, that are now going to be following along the Nature City journey. And I just want them to know, what can we expect? Because Down to Business is here. We're definitely tapped in now. We're not going anywhere. But what can people expect moving forward from you and the company?
From a product perspective, or what perspective?
Well, I would honestly say whatever you're willing to share. If you got some new products cooking up, we would love to know that. But even if there's anything that you're doing, look, we want to, Down to Business just like to pull the strings a little bit. So we just want to know whatever you got.
No, so one thing we always commit to our clients on the product side is, not only do we look to introduce new products where it makes sense, but we always want to improve what we have. Okay. So even if something is selling well, if science evolves, so if we find something that's better and can do a better job, we'll make the upgrade. Okay. And sometimes that pisses people off, because like, why did you change? I love it. It's like, look, it's going to be better. Don't worry. Trust me on this. Okay. And, so a lot of times we're just upgrading existing products as well as looking to introduce new ones. In terms of new things, we're focused a lot on women's health now. There's women's health has always, you know, been a challenge. And I think the biggest challenge, not because the need wasn't there, is just the science wasn't really there. Okay. But now it's starting to get a lot more better studies really focused on women of the right age and so on. And I think there's going to be some really big opportunities for women, especially in that, women who are dealing with issues around menopause and the whole transition of life, which is a huge transition. It really is. It affects a lot of parts of their, a lot of their bodies. I mean, just to give you a sense, tomorrow you probably know women have a longer lifespan than men. However, the health span is shorter. Okay. And a lot of that is just because of things like bone density, right? They're 3 times more likely to fracture a bone as they age than men. That could have catastrophic effects on your health and lose mobility, independence, and everything like that. So, so that's a focus on a big focus for us. Another thing we're doing on the product side, one thing is really, we really, a big part of the marketplace that people are really interested in is the whole beauty from within. So hair and skin is a big part of what we're focusing. We just came out with a product which is frankly the most expensive supplement we ever came out with, and it's a very expensive product. We probably don't sell for enough, but it is just packed with 10 scientifically studied ingredients for hair and skin that if you're interested in your appearance, and who's not, as you age, and this one could be for someone in their 30s and their 40s upwards to being seniors. It's a really great product. So that's been a big thing for us in terms of the marketing side. We just kind of starting to get our feet wet on TikTok, which is an interesting place. And we're going to try to build a community within TikTok of creators and users and stuff like that, just to help, just like everything else, to help build what makes us different, why we should be trusted, and just help those folks communicate our values and products to the world. So it just seems like I'm sure you being a CMO, I mean, it's one of the best top of funnel places to be these days, right? TikTok. So that's something we've recently embarked on, and hopefully a year from now we have some good success to talk about.
As someone who's on TikTok live right now, that's funny that you mentioned that. I feel like this is probably like my 4th, maybe or 5th live. And the first time I got on TikTok live, you should have seen me afterwards. I was just looking at the screen like I had no idea what was going on. I felt 40 years older than what I really was. So, but no, I definitely will say from a top of funnel perspective, from just like that quick content, that's just that quick hitter, that audience that could just come rapidly, TikTok is definitely a good place. So I'm loving this, from the women's health to just where you guys are moving and what you're thinking about in the education factor. I think that's the biggest thing here on the podcast. Like, obviously we talk to a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and creators, but the education is really what I love the most. And the fact that, you can just get on here and provide value and just show people something new and improved in what you guys are doing, but meaningful and impactful. I love that 110%. So again, just thank you for so much that you've done. And thank you for everything that you shared with us today and everything of the sort. So now the call to action that I like to give kind of to my people, but to you as well, in a sense, because, we've heard so much about Nature City. We've heard so much about what you're doing. We've heard so much about the products, but we want to know where we can find you. So when it comes to social media, when it comes to websites, when it comes to TikTok, give us everything you got. Please let us know where we can find you.
Well, our main website is naturecity.com. And from there you can get to a lot of our other socials and stuff like that. But if you're interested in the whole education process and learning more about supplements and how to shop for them and what ingredients do and the new science and all that type of thing, I do a podcast. It's called the Nature City Podcast, which you can watch on YouTube, or if you prefer listening, we're on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Not every episode is necessarily going to be for you, but when you see something, a topic you're interested in, We try to give some really, really good information that, again, you could trust. I mean, we're pretty careful about making sure what we're saying is accurate and true and in line with the science. And just like we do with our products, we want you to have faith in what we do and what we're telling you, even if it may be different from some others, right? So Nature City Podcast, naturecity.com. If you prefer shopping on Amazon, we're on Amazon too. And then, hey, hit us up on TikTok or follow us on TikTok. We're just in the beginning stages. So if we don't see a lot of activity there, it's because we just started. But we're going to change that.
Got to start somewhere. We'll definitely be doing that. But no, again, Carl, to you, to the team over at Nature City, to your wife, to everything that you guys have built over these last 20 plus years. Thank you. Thank you for being, just so willing to come on here and be a part of the Down the Business podcast. As I said, the message here is always just, connecting with the like-minded, sharing those stories, but also just putting that out to the masses and educating them in some form or fashion. I feel like we've done a lot of that today. So I can't thank you enough just for your team's responsiveness, for the time, for the just for everything, for the willingness to really just come on here and share your message. So thank you again for joining us. And to everybody, look, whether you're joining us on TikTok Live here, whether you're listening to us, you're watching us, whatever you're doing, I thank y'all enough for all the support. I have to say it at the end of every episode because it doesn't really go unnoticed or unappreciated. But from me to y'all, this has been another episode of the Down to Business podcast here with Tamar Turner.